We'd like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in today to Life Sciences Dash How to Eat to Live presentation. Today we'll be dealing with the alternative answers to your pre-existing, what now defined as comorbidity conditions in the new health paradigm with Mr. Victer Muhammad. Today, Mr. Victer Muhammad, we see a lot of news about a term that's called comorbidities. And for me, I had never really heard that term prior to now. I knew about pre-existing conditions because we heard about it all the time as it relates to our health insurance and whether it will be covered. Can you explain to us today um, what is the difference, or are they the same in the world of propaganda? How are they used, and why do we currently hear more about comorbidities as opposed to pre-existing conditions in the COVID-19 era? And thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Um, Comorbidities and pre-existing conditions are not, I would not call them synonyms. Pre-existing conditions are conditions from which a person was suffering prior to the onset of a new condition. Comorbidities uh, could be defined as conditions from which an individual is suffering simultaneously. So, or conditions from which an individual is suffering uh, from one infection, but at the same time, they may have high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, rheumatism, gout, all at the same time. So those would be considered comorbidities.
Yes, sir. Um, with those, the new terminology, comorbidities, and of course, in the normal health environment, we're familiar with pre-existing conditions. Now uh, we have the association with the mortality rate of individuals, especially in the African American community, being greater with those who have the term that they use, the comorbidities. And of course, in the African American community, with regard to the health conditions, we hear pre existing conditions. Why is that so pronounced in the COVID-19 environment today?
Well, quite frankly, I think that some of it is artificial. I'm not sure that all of that's being reported is actual. And so as a result, I think that some of the reporting and some of the discussion, some of the narrative that we hear is probably manufactured or exaggerated. Um, can you please repeat your question?
The question, let me rephrase it. The question is dealing with why is it so, why do we hear it so much in the media as it relates to comorbidities? And before we didn't hear that term. Now, as it relates to COVID, these are the pre existing conditions that cause the highest rate of mortalities of those who contract what is called COVID 19 as a virus.
Okay, thank you. I want to be careful on commenting on COVID 19. I am not convinced at this point of the narrative that's been presented for the last 12 months regarding COVID 19 or coronavirus. Um, Now, let's marginalize this to the African American community. I believe that the African American community is perhaps the most unhealthy community in terms of biological, social, and mental health that exist now on the planet Earth. The level of obesity, high blood pressure, cancer, both people being diagnosed with prostate cancer, women being diagnosed with breast and cervical cancer, uh, arthritis. These are considered comorbidities in the African American community. And each of those things that I just named does thwart the immune system in the human. Obesity alone frustrates the immune system in the human. And so, if you contract what is being termed as COVID 19, and let's say, for the sake of argument, that there is a reality known as COVID 19, and it does have the virulence that's being reported in the media. If that be the case, then there is no question of why people are suffering from the disease that is known as COVID 19, because that's a respiratory tract infection. And so, which means that in order for an infection like coronavirus to become toxic, the immune system in the human has to be compromised. Otherwise, you would not get an infection. I don't care what's being reported. I don't care what's being suggested. If you had a comparable immune system, then you wouldn't be contracting these viruses and these diseases. And so when we examine, the African American community, and we have all the uh, comorbidities or collaborating factors in the male. There's stress, there's racism, there's seeing the police cruiser in your rearview mirror. Um, there's unemployment. There's stress on the job from dealing with an unjust supervisor. Many of us have supervisors that it's just tormenting with whom to work. And so all these things, and then our diet is poor. Our diet is terrible. It blows the lid off the top of my head to see people in 2020 going to McDonald's to sit down and eat. I don't understand it. How you could do that in 2020. So that would be my response, Mr. Ahad.
As we look at the coronavirus diseases that are listed by the CDC, you've covered most of them that are here, but oddly enough, they have pregnancy as a pre-existing condition or a comorbidity condition as it relates to coronavirus. And they have COPD, which you spoke to as a respiratory issue. And we also have asthma and cancer. What would be the reason for them listing something like pregnancy as a pre-existing condition in the higher realms of those that are most greatly affected by the coronavirus?
Well, that could be attributed to the fact that when a woman is going through gestation, uh, her nutritional requirements change. And the nutritional requirements of a lactating mother or a mother who has a fetus developing inside her, the nutritional requirements of that mother is greatly augmented. And so, in a society where our diet, meaning when I say our, I'm referring to the African American, our diet is terrible or in the best case scenario, decent. Because we even when we get money, our diet is terrible because we began to eat foods that we think are associated with our financial status. And so we start eating shrimp, lobster, crab, scallops, mollusks, caviar, escargot, and these are all things that destroy health.
Mm.
So even those of us who have resources, we still have poor health. And so um, when a woman is going through gestation, getting back to the point, the nutritional requirements almost double. And so if the diet is poor and the woman's health was compromised prior to her becoming pregnant, then that situation is only augmented during those 9 months that she's pregnant, because the way the way uh, God designed a developing fetus is called preservation of species. And what that means is that the next generation is going to come to fruition regardless of what it takes, even if it means taking the life of the life that's carrying it. So that baby is going to be developed. And if the baby has to take calcium from the bones of the mother, the baby will do it. If the baby has to take the energy from the food that the mother consumes in order that that life can come to term, then that's exactly what will happen. And so, this in a woman who is undernourished during those 9 months of gestation, that becomes a comorbidity factor in the event that that woman takes on some other infection like COVID-19.
Question: how does the current pharmaceutical regimen for the African American play into the health issues that are now described as comorbidities or pre-existing condition, and do they set up your immune system to be compromised in an environment that we're currently living in, for the lack of a better term, the COVID-19 environment?
That's a good question, and it's one that it's a question to which all of humanity should listen. And the reason I include all of humanity is because the the entire planet Earth has been affected by Western medicine. I will not say that there is not some good in medicine, because there is, but the good is so little that I am not sure that it's worth the risk and the ramifications that do and will come from taking medicine. Um, I think the best way to describe the use of medicine in a fair, just, equitable, and succinct manner is to say that medicine is a way to convince you that you're being helped, but you are in fact destroying your body. A baby is born after getting the immunoglobulins from its mother's milk, if the mother chooses to breastfeed the baby. A baby, after about 2, 3, 6 years old, a baby has a pretty good immune system. But once we start taking that baby to the doctor, once we get that baby vaccinated, once we immunize that baby, I believe at that point, and I'm convinced to the point where so long as my children were under my auspices, they were never vaccinated, they were never immunized, and they never got sick. But once my children were no longer under my control, I don't know what happened to them. And but I would never authorize or support vaccinating myself or my children. And because I'm convinced that this is the beginning of your trips to the doctor and from the doctor to the pharmacist, where you began taking drugs, medicine, and I believe that your health starts to decline the day you start to take pharmaceutical drugs.
Thank you. You mentioned vaccinations, and of course, we're living in a time where they're rolling out the vaccinations for the current virus, COVID-19. You, as a biomedical research scientist working at NIH and Johns Hopkins and other great institutions, as a professional in this field at the highest level, what is your opinion, or your opinion as it relates to the current uh, vaccination that's being rolled out in the time that it is being rolled out, and what are the ramifications that you could see possibly taking place because of the expedience of what they put forth for those who are taking the vaccination, if that's a question you want to answer.
I will answer it, but I will be as fair, objective, and concise as I can be. Vaccines, in the theory behind them, are not inherently bad. The theory and the science that undergirds vaccines is good science. But in a world called the West, where capitalism and the flow of currency is the order of the day and the most important factor that exists under the uh, under the atmosphere, that technology has been tainted. And so now something that in its nature is good has, in my opinion, has become deadly. And so we can remember what happened with heroin in China, what happened with smallpox with the so-called Native Americans, what happened with syphilis with the African American in Tuskegee experiment, and so forth and so on. And I would include Ebola in DR Congo. I would include HIV/AIDS in America and throughout the world. I believe that all of these factors could have been prevented and could be thwarted with the use of a vaccine. But because of the nature of the rulers of this current Western world and their desire for economics, I would not advise anyone to take any vaccine that's produced by them. And I'll explain it like this. Everything that's created is neither good nor bad. Nothing is good, nothing is bad. Everything that's created is created with a nature. Water is wet. It's not good, it's not bad, it's water. If you pour it down your throat, it quenches your thirst. If someone pours it down your nose, it drowns you. But the water is just water. It didn't do anything. The person in whose hand the water was committed the crime. The water was just water. And so, likewise, with a vaccine is neither good nor bad. It's a vaccine. And the science and biochemistry behind the vaccine it's not bad. But in the hands of a diabolical entity, uh, a type of a human, then that type of human made it bad with his intentions and his motive, not the vaccine itself. And so until I make a vaccine, I won't be taking one.
We live in an environment where the population is not as knowledgeable as a man like yourself, myself included, but we live under rules and regulations that might require us to um, take the administration of this vaccine. Those in the medical field are currently looking for alternatives to be able to continue to work, one, and keep their health, two, and have a fear of the vaccine. These are people that you see posting postings now that are saying that here's what's in the vaccine from this company, here's what's in the vaccine from that company. And these are the professionals. So, what does a layman do as it relates to that? And how do they say to those who are telling them they must take the vaccine that, I don't want to take it, I choose not to take it? Are there alternative choices that people can use that you see that would be acceptable in this environment for them to maintain their jobs, maintain their lives, be able to go outside in the future in the current environment as it relates to the virus that's out there?
A person always has a choice. It depends on what you're willing to do and the sacrifices that you're willing to make. Everybody swears that they want an omelet, but nobody wants to crack an egg. And there's no way to get the omelet without cracking an egg. The African American swears that he wants to be free, but you want to fill out forms and fill out applications and get permission from speak, and then you're free. No one can free you. That is a decision that you make and then you live it. And so likewise is it with someone compelling you to either inject yourself with a foreign object called a vaccine or be injected. No one can compel you to do that. You have sovereign authority over your body. God gave you sovereign authority over your body, and you reserve the right to make the final decision about what's done with your body. If that's not true, then why do you have to sign the donor portion on the back of your driver's license before they can take your organs? If you're already dead, then why don't they just take your organs? You can't say no because your body belongs to you. And all it takes, if a law is enacted that you are being compelled to take the vaccine, then all it takes is for one person to refuse, let themselves be arrested, and then you file your case in the courts. And it might take you 2 years to win, but I believe that if you get your case before the Supreme Court, then that decision from whatever government it is will be overturned because the Supreme Court has a history of recognizing and enforcing the Constitution and natural law. So before there was an America, there was law. America is only 200 and something years old. And so before there was an America, there was law. And that law, before there was an England, there was law. And before the Moors out of Africa brought law into what is now Europe, there was natural law. And natural law supersedes the law of any nation. And natural law states that a person has just cause to protect their own life, and they have the sovereign right to make the final decisions about their life. So my my word to you would be to say no, I'm not going to take it. And if they say, well, if you don't take it, you can't work here, then you get your lunch box, your lunch pail, you get the photos off your desk, you put them in a box, you grab your laptop if it belongs to you, your cell phone, and you go home. I can't hear you.
Thank you. We hear in the news about herd immunity. What is herd immunity and how is it obtained in the environment like with a human being? And is vaccinations the only way to obtain it as it relates to any virus?
Um, in all my years of studying immunology and the immune system, I never heard until the last 12 months. I'd never heard of this term, heard this phrase, herd immunity. And so I'm unable to intellectually speak on it because I don't know what it is. And the only people I've heard say things like that are reporters. And I don't think reporters are scientists or even biologists. So I don't know what it is.
Well, let me ask the question another way scientifically. If enough people are vaccinated for a virus, would it stop anyone in that environment, a person, from contracting that environment because someone else is vaccinated for that virus?
Anything is possible. Uh, Anything is possible. How probable that is, I think it's very low because my immunity is for my biological system called my body, and it's germane to my body. If you've been an alcoholic for the last 70 years, you've destroyed your liver, you've destroyed your kidney. I live next to you, and I'm also 70 years old, uh, but I don't have any of those pre-existing conditions that you have. I go and get vaccinated. So if the vaccine works, I'm immunized. Well, how is that going to prevent you from getting infected? It doesn't.
Well, we're at the end of our program, and as it relates to comorbidities, the African American community, what advice would you give us going into 2021 for the current environment of the viruses that are out there, the pre-existing conditions that we suffer from, and the nature of dealing with a vaccination that could possibly become a requirement for you to exist on this planet? Um, what advice would you give to anyone that's living in the environment currently as a scientist at the level that you are?
The best advice that I can give is I'm not going to lie to the people and tell you that there's something you can take that's going to correct your immune system overnight. In all the years that I've studied the human body and the bodies and systems of other animals, I've never known anything that a pill you can take or something you can squirt in your mouth or your nose or anything that's going to instantaneously repair your immune system. And so the best advice that I can give is to tell you that you can improve your health, but it's one of those things that's going to take time. I believe that you could be placed on a regimen that within 6 months to 24 months, you could rebuild your immune system where it would be comparable for you to fight off any infection or any disease, uh, especially any viral, bacterial, or, protozoa infection. It can be done. And it can be done very inexpensively and very easily, but it does require discipline and it does require restraint. Um, I think that that's the best advice that I can give. And the people are just going to have to be re educated, not educated in this old Western way, taking medicine and taking vitamins and these things. I'm not, no, I'm not talking about that. But you will have to be re educated. And the biggest problem right now with the human being, particularly in Western culture, is just need to be re educated about health and diet.
We'd like to thank you for coming on today to Life Sciences How to Eat to Live. Mr. Victer Muhammad, we thank you for explaining to us who are looking for guidance in this environment that we can maintain our healthy lives and also continue to live within the society in which we exist right now with the current conditions that are being put upon us. We'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in today to Life Sciences How to Eat to Live. I want to end the program with giving you the greetings. First, thanking Mr. Victer Muhammad for coming on. This is his program. Life Sciences is his corporation, and we are here to try. We're not trying, we are helping those who will listen. Next week, we'll be talking more about um, one more question. Please give our listening audience an idea of what the new health paradigm looks like, because we always want to take the opportunity to inform them of what the new health paradigm under your ideal consists of, if you want to, or just how they will be looking for a new understanding of health and not medicine.
The new health paradigm basically uh, is what we've been talking about over the last hour. Um, Changing the diet of the human being, changing the outlook, addressing social issues, addressing the mental health issues that affect humanity, starting first with the African American. But what we're doing is not just germane to the African American, because humanity as a whole is suffering from being under Western hegemony for the last 6,400 years. Um, it has just turned, it being Western hegemony, Western culture, has just destroyed the human being. Before the Western world came into existence, we did not eat the meat that we eat today.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of us were vegetarians, and this is one of the reasons we lived so long. This is one of the reasons that you only needed a physician and not a medical doctor, because everybody was going, people are going to have a gallbladder that need to be removed, or a appendix that might be about to rupture, or you're going to break a leg. So you need a physician for these things. But when the medical doctor came along under Western culture, that changed that changed the diagram, and our health began to plummet after coming under Western medicine, drugs. And so today we are in the process of repairing that health, but without Western medicine, without drugs, just good health management and using the body's own systems, just repairing the systems and thus repairing the health. So basically, the new health paradigm involves repairing the body's systems so that the body can take care of itself.
Thank you, Mr. Victor Muhammad of Life Sciences of Washington. I'm Erica Hod of natures-v.com. We thank our viewers for tuning in to Life Sciences of Washington How to Eat to Live Facebook channel. You can find many of Victor Muhammad's videos on Nature's V Autoimmune Disease Foundation YouTube channel. We thank you all for your time, and greetings to you, and have a good evening.